All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to FF Uncensored. We are live on Facebook.
Good to go. We're getting
Yeah.
this thing figured out. So we have, I don't think there's anything really fun going on. Kind of fun. We've got some new products that we're carrying at FF. Ashley's been carrying them for a little while, called Just Ingredients. So we're playing with them. They actually got some good flavors, that aren't like, usually when you add flavoring to stuff, now you start to add in a bunch of interesting components to get flavors, right? So they've been able to do a good job of actually getting a good flavor and keeping it clean, without all the added sugars and that kind of stuff. So we're testing. I think we just did a pre-order with a bunch of stuff, but I know like some things that they're playing with, pre-workouts, collagen. I know Aaron has a nighttime, kind of a nighttime thing that has magnesium and some other stuff in it. That's been
I'm
good.
also going to throw out electrolytes, and they have awesome deodorant
Yeah, the deodorant.
and
There's some of that. Yeah.
chapstick. And their chapstick is really good. Just, spice it up. They also released a whole men's skincare line too, or like beard oil, that kind of thing. So I thought that was pretty cool. That's pretty new. So I'll just talk a little bit about just ingredients. So when I was looking for products to carry in the gym, I was looking for something made in the US, something convenient. Also, I always have clients that want more flavors, like, anything like that. So I went with them for like a more flavored line of protein powders. Their ingredients are super clean. They do seasonal flavors, which I think is really cool. So like over the holidays, they did a peppermint one. And they have an awesome snickerdoodle recipe, which is probably hands down one of my favorite protein powders. And they mix really well with water or with like beverage of choice. The only thing I like to say is that I like to mix my vanilla protein powder with orange juice. Their vanilla protein powder has cinnamon in it. They don't mix well with orange juice. So, if you have a thing that you do all the time and then you do it and you find out, yeah, don't do that. But it is one of the best blending protein powders that I've used. I think them and Aniva, like, very similar in how well they mix when you use them.
Hmm.
Um, so I am a huge fan. I am making my protein ice cream with it. But they also have really great electrolytes and electrolyte flavors. And I have been using the pre-workout. They have a caffeine-free pre-workout as well, which is really nice. So I have been using.
Is that really pre-workout if you don't put at least enough caffeine to kill a small mammal in a pre-workout?
I love it because it gives me everything else that I love about a pre-workout, but I don't do super great with, if I do a
Did they just leave out caffeine, but they leave
yeah,
everything else like beta
yeah. So
alanine and
yes, yeah. So like for me, I don't do well with a ton of caffeine. So like I have to choose if I'm going to work out at 7 a.m., which is my workout time, coffee or pre-workout. I cannot have both, which I don't love. And I mean, like that's for the whole day. Like I will have a pre-workout or I will have coffee. And I guess I could swap my coffee for tea, but like we have a coffee shop now right next to the gym. So like I'm not switching out my coffee. I'm just buying it every day. So personally, I love the caffeine free is a really great option. And I have been recommending it a ton. I have a lot of clients that are pregnant right now. So for them watching their caffeine intake, they are loving it as well. So
cool. I like that. Yeah. So I mean, we're always kind of looking for new products that kind of fit our criteria, call it. Like we don't just really recommend anything. We want to make sure that it checks a bunch of boxes, and it's stuff we'd be willing to take ourselves, which is why we kind of have a random eclectic group of things that we carry. Yeah, so it's just a new company that we're playing around with to see what they have to offer. So
yep.
yeah. All right. So you had a specific question. Is that a red FF or is the
It's
camera just red?
orange. It's
Oh.
orange. It's just the lighting.
Hmm.
It's orange. A
All right.
red
So
FF. Who would
that was
make
like,
a red FF?
I
Ooh.
don't know. We did have some red FF polos a while back. So there, what was the question that came up? I think this is gonna be a really good topic for today.
All right. So, will adding weight to exercise just cause me to gain weight? I feel like I'm getting bigger and I've been increasing my weights. Dot, dot, dot.
So that was something someone wrote, right? And so I
Yep.
think whenever we're starting to um the word I'm looking for, analyze, right? Or we're starting to find answers, we need to look at the words that people use. So the first thing I would see there is a word in there called I feel. So feel is a very like, I don't really know if this is the truth or not, but I feel like this is happening. All right, cool. Can we get confirmation that this is actually truth, right? So if someone, it's not like I know I'm gaining weight or I see the scale going up, I feel like I'm gaining weight. And so like there's probably a follow up to this, like what are you feeling, or what is the feeling? Are your pants fitting differently, right? Are like, is it clothes? Is it whatever, right? Because if we think about working out, right, and adding load, most of the time we're going to see a level of increase in muscle. Like if you're challenging loads and all that kind of stuff, you may, and people are different. Like we've had a few clients where certain exercises will grow certain areas of their body very quickly. Like we had one client that like doing a lot of lunging, she gets a lot of like growth through her legs. For some reason, that stimulus was, and she didn't want her legs to necessarily get bigger, so we just didn't do as much lunging. And we were able to like stay on top of it that way. So there is going to be sometimes some growth with things. One thing about too, when you work out, right? When we work out and we're getting a lot of muscle contraction, is we're going to drive a lot of water into muscles. And so that's where like that pump, right? Like if you do a bunch of bicep curls, right, and your biceps feel like they're just exploding, right? It's not like it's not the muscle got that much bigger, as we just drive a lot more fluid into that muscle area. Um, so so I think the feel thing needs like a level of clarification to be like, what are we feeling, right? Because that may give some more insight.
This is also a really powerful place for assessment. Are you using a scale? Are you using an in-body? Are you using circumference measurements? I have been doing more circumference measurements. I hadn't done it for a really long time. But I have a lot of female clients that don't particularly want to get on the scale because the scale is very this, but like we can see that there are changes happening in different places. And that is a big thing. Like, are you actually taking some kind of things? Like, you can use your clothes as an assessment, like your skinny pants and your fat pants, like, because every lady has them. Everyone's laughing. They're like, yep. Are you noticing like I'm wearing these pants more frequently because they're more comfortable? I'm wearing these ones. And where are they comfortable or uncomfortable at? Are they tight in the thighs? Are they tight in your butt? Are they tight in your waist? Those are like they're very different things. Like, are you gaining in certain things? And then actually taking measurements. There is a level of
Measurements I think are a good one here. I think measurements, most people have access to a scale, right?
yep.
But not everyone has access to any sort of like bioimpedance, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And a tape measure, but consistency. So like when I measure a client above like upper arm, I measure 4 inches above the elbow up. And that is where I measure on every client every time. And you have to keep your measurements consistent. And it could be, if you have really long arms, it could be a longer measurement, a 6 inch or whatever, but you need the same point to measure upwards every single time. The same is going to be if you're measuring a quad. You're going to want to measure up and you want to make sure that you're not putting a bunch of pressure and flexing that leg when you're measuring it. So those would be the big ones. Hips, the widest area across your butt. Women, your waistline is your smallest part of your waist, not your belly button. And men, you'll just measure across your belly button. And those are like the really big ones. You can take or leave chest measurements. Those are amplified and changed so much by what bra you're wearing for a woman.
And one thing with the waist measurement, like as a female, you may want to take like a belly button measurement just because like you might see more change. Like your true waist for a lot of people is like right under your rib cage, right? And so many times we don't carry a lot of like body fat kind of in that area, right? Most people are kind of like mid abdomen. And so, but it's having a landmark that you look
Well,
at.
and all three. Take a waistline, take a
Right,
belly button, take a hips. Like
right.
less measurements will hurt you more than more measurements will.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with taking more outside of it. It's just going to take more time, right?
Yeah.
Um, and then the other thing is like tightness of a tape, right? If you squeeze really, really hard, right, you can make your numbers go down. And so it's just being aware of like there are little like tape measures that have a little ball and a spring in them, so you can get like the correct amount of tension or a reliable amount of tension. If those are good things as well, if you're really kind of serious about this and in going. But you know, I usually pull tension tight and then I release it. And you don't want the band to be floppy. Like it shouldn't be floppy. It should be against the skin, but it shouldn't be compressing the skin, if that
And it
makes
should be
sense.
parallel to the ground.
Correct. Right.
So, but I will say that I think at this point in training, I would say measurements have been underutilized. I have underutilized measurements for probably the last handful of years. Um, I have taken advantage of having access to an in-body. And now I realize the two together can be really beneficial if your goals are weight loss, because sometimes the numbers on the scale do not move at the rate you think.
Hmm.
I have a client that is down, like, she's down 8 pounds, but she's down like 15 inches. And that is 15 inches sounds like you are a badass.
That's a fair
Seven,
amount.
7, 8 pounds, you're kind of like, oh, I still have so far to go. But like 15 inches is a lot of inches. Like you don't even realize. So like it is super powerful. And this is like 15 inches taken on all the measurement points on the body that I take. So if anyone's trying to figure out how you do that math. But I think like it is super underutilized and it's a really great way to assess where you're at. And if you are someone that is super self-conscious about the scale, it gives you a qualitative, quantitative, quantitative number to measure, to be aware of where you are without stepping on the scale.
And like the other thing that we just need, this is probably the elephant in the room to an extent, is weight gain and weight loss, right? One is going to be heavily dictated by hydration. Like that is going to be a factor that is going to have the most impact on a day by day, minute by minute, hour by hour type thing. Because our body is constantly like, you don't know it, but you're sweating, right? But it's evaporating before it actually kind of turns into water. And you're going to the bathroom, and you're doing all of these things. Like the vast majority of our body is water. And so that those fluid dynamics are going to have the biggest impact on things. So understanding that, and then understanding like fat loss, right? Fat is an energy source on our body. And so we're constantly burning fat and we're constantly creating fat. And so when we get into energy surpluses coming from food, right, that's how we start gaining. That's how we start storing fat. And if we're getting into energy deficits, right, that's how we start losing it. And so weight training isn't going to just because I'm weight training make me gain weight.
Yes. So to gain weight, even to gain muscle mass, like specifically, like if your goal was to go in the gym and put on 15 pounds of muscle mass, you could only gain that muscle mass by being in a calorie surplus. There's a lot of other things you need to do that, but you need to be in a calorie surplus. So if you are training and maybe you are not just, you feel like you're gaining weight, maybe you truthfully are gaining weight, you are in a calorie surplus. So my thought is you can still gain muscle and maintain your muscle mass, because as you lose weight, you might even lose some, that's okay. But sometimes when you start lifting heavier, your body then tells you you are more hungry, where you don't notice how much food you're consuming. Like you are working harder in the gym, so you're naturally eating a little bit more. And maybe you're like, oh, I'm still eating the same amount. You don't know that you won't visually notice the difference between 3 ounces and 3.2 ounces, and then 3.2 ounces to 3.4 ounces, and 3.4 to 3.6. And all of a sudden you're eating 4 ounces of something, insert whatever. And you don't notice because this change of how much more you were adding to your plate was so small as you did it incrementally. And now you went from having this to having that. And that could be the difference between hundreds of calories that you're consuming at every single meal. And ta-da, that is where our weight gain comes from, because we're weight train, like our body is meeting more demand, so we want to give it to meet with its demands, which is causing the gain.
And so that's where like a lot of people may insert issue here is why I'm gaining weight. Well, maybe issue is affecting your behavior, right? Hormones, yes, hormones don't cause you to gain weight, but they can influence how we interact with the world, what we're feeling, if we're feeling hungry, if we're feeling full. Though, like these are driven hormonally, right? And through physical things like stretches in the stomach and that kind of stuff. And so sometimes we think that's the issue where like that it plays into it, but the issue is ultimately like the food. And so there are certain types of exercises, or exercise, I should say. Some people with like cardio get hungrier and eat more. Some people with strength. So it's just really paying attention to that stuff. Um, and then deciding if it's worth worrying about. Right. And so I think we have to kind of pick and choose our battles to an extent. And so like weight is going to shift around. And so I usually like clients to do like an average, like take your weight over the week, every day, and then take an average of that, and then do that for a couple weeks, and then we look at averages week over week versus like what does it say today versus what it said yesterday, um, which can be a good number in the moment. If we see a jump of 3 or 4 pounds, like we probably should just be a little bit more cognizant today. Maybe had a ton of salt yesterday, and now we're just hanging on to a bunch more water. Right? It's information, but we need to know what to do with that information and not just be like, I'm good if it goes down and I'm bad if it goes up. It's just not always the case. So that's the other thing you have to be aware of is, can I objectively look at these numbers and are they actually helping me make better decisions? Or is it just making me emotionally unstable, which is a very real thing.
Yeah, and I will also say at different times during the month for females, you are going to feel and look differently. So, and that doesn't matter where you are in your life cycle. You still cycle monthly, not daily like a man. So, like different times in the month, even if you're menopausal or postmenopausal, you will still feel differently and look differently at different times during the month because your body still cycles the hormones in a 28-day cycle. And I'm just using 28 days because it's an easy 4-week cycle, but it's still going to be a big change in how your body responds. So saying that might change from one week to the next week because of how your hormones change like week over week, day over day in the female cycle.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And are we sleeping? Are we getting enough sleep? Right? Sleep is a crazy driver. Just one night of poor sleep will decrease our ability to handle glucose. Like it's just
and on top of that, decrease your ability, but then you're probably craving more carbohydrates. And the key word in carbohydrate is hydration. When you eat more carbs, you have higher water retention too. So like, not that carbs are bad. We of course need them and we tell you to eat them. But it like all of those things play a huge role. And really the driving force for body composition changes, like strength training helps a ton, but the driving force in body composition changes is all of the
nutrition.
lifestyle factors.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say lifestyle factors, not just nutrition, but nutrition, stress, sleep,
Like
um,
ultimately, it's nutrition, and those other things influence your
your
ability to
nutrition.
do nutrition, right? If
Yeah.
I'm not sleeping, my ability to do nutrition is a lot. I'm not as good, right? Because my body is going to be pushing me in different directions, right? If I'm low on sleep, I need energy. What's the best way to get energy? Sugar. Okay, cool. Like I need like, and so there's all these kind of processes that have been built up since the beginning of time that's helped us survive. And it isn't until modern society that we've had 24/7 availability of food, right? And so, which now those processes kind of work against us because we're still living in a very primitive, in a primitive kind of state. One other thing I wanted to note is we talked about hydration and carbohydrates and that kind of stuff. So one of the things when someone goes on a low carbohydrate diet or Atkins keto, whatever, right? Like they typically lose a ton of weight right away, right? And that's not that they lost a bunch of fat. It's because they lost a bunch of water, right? Because they decrease the carbohydrate stores that someone has in their body. So we have a couple places where we can store carbs, right? We have muscle glycogen, which is like the little energy stores in our muscle, and then we also have it in the liver, right? And so those can be depleted, and they're constantly be depleted and replenished depending on our diet. So if we're doing higher intensity exercise or a lot of exercise, we're going to deplete the glycogen in our muscles, and then eventually in our liver. And so basically, glycogen is like quick energy, right? If I need energy right now, I can go into these stores and get it. It's a lot quicker to get it from glycogen than it is from fat. Fat takes a little bit longer. It's kind of slow going. It's got to be warmed up a little bit. Where glycogen, I can get it and I can get some energy out. And when I say energy, we think of like ATP, which is ultimately the currency for the cells.
I
Um,
honestly feel like it's the difference between starting your car in the summer and starting your car in the winter.
mhm. Yeah, like it's like boom, let's go, right? Versus like hitting the nitro. Um, and so that's like one of the reasons I think some people too gravitate towards lower carbohydrate type diets because you see that big flush right away and like, oh, I lost, 8 pounds in the first week or 12 pounds in the first week. And it's like, well, you kind of lost a bunch of water, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It
But you
is.
will gain that back. Like
So right.
that's the thing of our body. Like you will lose it, but then your body will naturally pull you back to like getting more hydration. So those that is not long-term weight loss. That's like, hey, I lost it really quick. So like if someone was like, hey, I need to, I want to cut some weight and go into this weekend, what is the first thing I'm going to tell them? No processed carbs, no pastas, no breads, no rices. Watch your, I mean, I would probably even say like reduce your potatoes. Like you live on now vegetables
Right.
and meat. Like that is going to be what I'm going to tell any client that's like, hey, I have an event coming up this weekend. I'm wearing a dress. I want to look my best. You're a week out. Like the only thing you can do is decrease how much water weight you have on your body that fast. And that's
Right.
all those quick weight loss things are. They're all reducing the amount of water weight in your body. They're not giving you those long-term results. Not that keto and low carb and that kind of stuff can't be used for decreasing weight in long-term and getting you weight loss, but they work so well in the beginning because you have cut out. I mean, I don't want to say you've cut out an entire macronutrient because you haven't, because you're eating some kind of vegetables and stuff, but like you've really cut out a ton of calories. The reason that diets work is that they cut stuff out. All of them have in common our favorite thing to cut out: processed food. And that's where all of us probably could start, is cut out processed food, and you don't need to pick a crazy diet. So,
Right. So, yeah. So I just wanted to kind of to just talk about that, because I think that's why sometimes people gravitate towards that particular diet. It can be very successful. It's a tool. It's a tool in the toolbox, and your job as a human being is to figure out what tools work best for you in order to move in the direction that you want to move, that fit in with the life that you want to live. And so, if you can figure that out, life becomes a little bit easier. Um, and then there may be times when I need to employ those tools because maybe I've kind of, gotten away from the tool shed for a while, and I need to go back to the tool shed and get myself a new tool, which is very common, right?
I love your analogies. You are the king of analogies. The tool
That one,
shed.
that one's right off the dome right there. That
I
was
mean, I don't know who has a tool shed anymore, but like Trevor, he has a tool
the
shed.
tool
I think
shed. That's right.
it's called the garage.
We've got tools in the tool shed. Um, yeah. So I think that's good. I don't really have anything else of value to add to
I
that.
think so. So if you are weight training and you feel like your results aren't coming to you the way that they want, take some measurements, do all of that kind of stuff. And I would evaluate your diet by my favorite thing, a food log. I don't care if you weigh and measure, but actually just write, even just being honest with writing it down, pen to paper, or in your notes section in your phone, in that notes app. It doesn't have to get crazy, but like being honest about what you're actually putting in your mouth all day long. Because most people don't realize how many times they walk into their kitchen and they go, oh, I have an M&Ms on the counter. Wow, that was really hard. And you eat a handful. How many handfuls do you truthfully have? When you're actually logging, you catch and notice all of those habits that kind of snuck in. And I went with that. And not that I have that M&Ms on my counter, but food on the counter is a very easy way that you don't realize, or someone's snack drawer at work that you sneak into at 2:00 every day. But logging is a huge one that I think we don't even need to weigh and measure to get that crazy. I mean, you
No.
can to really amplify your results, but like just write it down. Like what foods did you
Awareness, right.
actually consume today? And being honest, because how many times have you eaten an Oreo and done it in the pantry and pretended no one in your family knew you ate it?
Right. It's awareness. It's awareness and accountability around what you're doing. And many times for most people, that can be enough to be like, nah, all right, like I get it. Like I need to clean a few things up. And then you just can make the appropriate. And then I think finding some sort of rhythm, or kind of your own guidelines, your own set of guidelines to help you be successful in the long term. So we don't keep doing this like free for all, really restrictive, free for all, really restrictive, free for all. There is a middle ground. But sometimes it takes some practice. So as long as we're practicing, we're moving forward.
Exactly. All right, guys, until next time.